So Catherine, you got your book behind you there, Good Humans Sell. Why would anyone have to write a book like that?
Well,
it just seems crazy.
It is crazy. So I actually had an interview where someone misunderstood the question, or one of the points I was making a little bit, in that they said, why do people keep being in sales if they hate sales so much? And I said, no, that's not it. Actually, the reason I picked the title, How Good Humans Sell, is because what my research shows is that full-time sales professionals, for whom this is what they're supposed to be doing every day, all day, business development, they actually have automatic and non-conscious negative feelings about the sales profession. And so I want people, number one, I want to call that out and say, if you ever worry about being perceived as too pushy, you're in good company. Most humans worry about this. Number two, there are ways to work through this so that you can show up and really feel like you're presenting your genuine, whole self, being true to yourself and your values, and be more successful in selling.
I'm absolutely convinced that there's this dynamic, and it's mathematical. There's this top 1% where none of this stuff applies. They're just there. And there's kind of like everybody else, but obviously it drives down into quadrants. And I'm sure this can be studied and has been, even in sales. I'm sure there's like studies on all this stuff. But how deep does this go? So what do you think, just from an anecdotal standpoint, in your experience, is that problem not there? You know, who doesn't have this problem? Is it that top 10% of top performers? Is it only the great 1%? You know, what is it?
Great question. I'm going to say 1 to 5%. This is a guess. I don't have that as part of my official research, but I'm going to say most people struggle with this. And the part that is so interesting in the beginning of my book about the research is that these were not just anyone polled. I mean, I polled people who said they were business to business, full-time sales employees. So these were not entrepreneurs who have to sell right now until they have enough money to hire someone. These are not people who are even part-time in the role for whatever reason, life circumstances. These are people who presumably elect to be there. And so one statistic, Larry, that does come to mind is the Pareto Principle. I think we do know that in general, 20% do 80% of the work. And that's what's so tricky, is as long as the owner of the company, if they figure out how to be a good seller and they're performing, they'll often make allowances for people who are actually underperforming beneath them. And I think at the root of what's going on there is fear of how they'll be perceived, the fact that we all have to interpret what it means when someone doesn't reply to us. And so then we start selling like we want to buy, and we think, oh, they must think this or they must think that, when we actually don't have any information about what they are actually thinking. We start to spin up a story, as I like to say.
Yeah, the stories we tell ourselves. Is this a mindset solution? Is this a mindset problem? It requires a mindset solution then, or is it something else?
Yeah, I think it is. I have a very simple diagram that I like to show people when I'm training. It says sales success. It's a circle that says sales success, and 50% has a line down the middle of the pie, and on the left side it says beliefs, and on the right side that says process. So I think sales success is at least 50% beliefs. Now, when I say beliefs, I mean, I'm talking about what encompasses a healthy mindset, both about what's possible for you as a person to achieve. What do you think you, Larry, what do I think I, Catherine, deserve simply by being a human being? What do we deserve to be able to enjoy? I also mean what your impressions are and your beliefs about sales are in that circle. So that's about half the equation. And then how to process stuff is about the other half. And when we are reframing, this is where those things come together, Larry, that I think is so fun, which is, I'm not going to tell you just to have affirmations about why what you sell is valuable, although that is a portion of the equation. I'm all for affirmations, but you actually can go gather real evidence. I tell people, go look at your reviews, look at who's giving you referrals, ask for feedback. That is real evidence outside of you that can shape your mindset and change you as you go, you know what? The story I tell myself in my maybe habitual negative self-talk is actually untrue according to this outside data. So I look for that internal and external change to address the mindset.
What's interesting about your saying is that if it's 50-50, that's 100%, and 50% attitude mindset, and then 50% process, but there's 0% then for likability, relationship expertise, talent, drive and desire, those sorts of qualities. Are you saying that that stuff is not important, and anybody, if they deal with attitude and process, can find a way to make this work?
Well, part of why I said how good humans sell is that I guess I do have a presupposition that there is some people liking people part of it. I think if you are an outright narcissist or a sociopath,
well, let's leave them out. I'm thinking more of the the disc S and C types.
Okay.
Where it's kind of like, could they do this? Like if they had the right attitude and they had the right process.
Yeah.
And this is a lot of where the company owners are, right? The self-employed solo operators fitting right there. Yes. And they hate this.
Yes.
So then it's like, if they do this kind of stuff, attitude and process, is that going to work, or are they still going to hate it?
It's a great question. So I don't know that I can bring them to a place that they would love it. I do think it's naturally easier for some than others. I actually believe everyone can learn to like it more. And I think everyone can become more proficient. I really do. It's kind of, I feel like kind of a version of your question, Larry, is whether introversion or extroversion, is an advantage, or personality advantages. And I think that I think you can make just as strong a case for, we know that great sales calls from the buyer's perspective are actually when the buyer gets to talk more. So I would say that while people will like to say she has the gift of gab, or this horrible expression, they can sell ice to an Eskimo. Okay, why does an Eskimo need ice? I hate that expression. I hate that expression.
Because I need them to buy ice so I can make money. That's why.
Exactly. So even if you do believe that some people genetically have an advantage, I believe, my experience of training all kinds of people, and because of who signs up for the programs, it's mostly people for whom this is not easy, for whom they are wondering this question you're asking. Yeah. They tend to be more introverted. They tend to be practitioners who are saying, look, I'm just not in a position to hire somebody else. I have to learn to get better at this and grow this business until a point at which I can hire someone else. And I tell them, you have such a unique advantage because you can learn to ask great questions that are thoughtful and consultative and thought-provoking in a good way for your prospect. You are probably going to be more comfortable with long pauses, with there being silence. I'm married to a person who does not like to think out loud. He wants to think about his answer before he gives it. And half the population is that way.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And so that means at least half the sellers out there are that way. And so I think that those are actually, one could argue, those are inherent dispositional advantages if you get some of that process part figured out to, just at least to a point that you feel comfortable enough. You think, when I get on a discovery call, I know the main things I want to know coming out of this. I know the main things I want to ask. I think it's completely learnable. And I do believe that part of the beliefs, part of all of that work around mindset, I think that you do get into service, giving, caring about other humans, things like that. I think it can encompass that.
What's interesting to me about what you're saying is this advantage part. So if you think about who are the buyers, more of the buyers are like this 50% of non-sellers than the 50% of sellers, because most people who are sellers aren't really buying anything because they can't sit there and compare all of this complicated stuff and decide which option makes the most sense. So does it get to the point where actually it is a significant advantage if someone can get over the hurdle of thinking, I'm a bad person because I have to do this and it's uncomfortable and I have to be like that extroverted person who talks all the time. They get over that and then they're actually doing better and then they love it because it's working.
Because if you have fewer words in a day, so let's talk again about introversion, extroversion. If you get energy from the experience and you actually just have all these thoughts that come to your head while you're in the middle of the call, you can tend to dominate or I think get derailed. And if you will be a little bit more behind the scenes, it doesn't have to feel this way to the prospect, of course, but if you're a little bit more prescriptive about what you need to know coming into this call and going through it, then you're probably going to be a better seller too, because you're going to lay out a plan. Like, I think that somebody who is process oriented and who is okay with things not being spontaneous. I mean, there's nothing wrong with coming on and saying, I have 3 questions I typically like to ask people to make sure that we're a fit. How's that sound to you? I mean, if that's the way you want to sell, I think people will go, great, because from the buyer's perspective, now they know what to expect.
Right.
So one of the things that I've learned over the last several years, I am a prolific user of numbers and bullets in emails. And what I mean by that is what we call in Business Made Simple and the Story Brand Marketing Framework, they call it the plan. The plan is literally telling people, here is a path to take the next step, whatever the next step is. In the beginning, in a direct sales, consultative, professional services sale, it might be to schedule a call, right? Later, it might be to sign up for the trial or enroll in the pilot or sign up for the class, but literally saying, so-and-so, here's a follow-up email I might model for you. You and I have a call. You're going to go talk to your partner about it. You're going to think about it. We're going to talk again. And then when it's time for me to follow up, I could restate, Larry, when we spoke, you said you were going to do blah, blah, blah. If you'd like to move forward, I want to remind you of the dates. Here they are. And here's what we need to do to go forward. Number 1, do such and such. Number 2, do this. Number 3, do this. People are so hesitant, Larry, because they feel like that sounds almost condescending. It's not condescending. You think about how you feel when someone makes it easy for you because you have 500,000 decisions to make in a day. And that's what we call
tell me what to order in your restaurant. I don't want 15 choices. I don't want a 15-page menu. Tell me what you want me to eat.
That feels like Cheesecake Factory. It's too confusing. But when you go to something really high end and they say, here's the day's catch, you're like, that's what they got.
I'm good.
I love that. I love that too. I make it easy to buy from me. And that, I would say, in that sales success circle, that is actually beliefs and process. Right? You might think it's mostly process, but it's actually saying, my mindset is that as a guide, what I'm going to do is make it easy for you to say yes to me. And that I understand that all of the words I say and the words I write, I want to have be very clear, simple, straightforward, lots of white space, easy to follow, because I respect that you are a busy person who has many decisions to make.
One of the things that's unique about what you're talking about is you have expertise in story brand, as you'd mentioned. I don't know if everybody here is familiar with the storytelling revolution, as I think of it. So stop talking in jargon and start telling stories. I actually did a LinkedIn post on this a couple of days ago that got a lot of comments. And then, the other side of it is this, learning how the sales game actually really works and making that a secret power, even if it's not your inclination. Switch your mindset, switch your process. How do those two things come together then? There's such a relationship there, I think.
It is really interesting because when people say the storytelling revolution, I don't think you mean this, but some people might hear that and think, oh, that is where, as the owner seller, as the founder seller, as the entrepreneur, that's where I'm going to talk about the history of my company and how we help people.
Yeah.
And what that marketing framework teaches that I referenced is it's actually saying every buyer is the main character of their own story. And they're marching along in their life and they're saying, I'm trying to collect the things that help me get where I'm trying to go. And as much as you can help me understand, if you can help me get there, then I want to work with you. So that's what I mean when I say storytelling, is this idea that we are helpers in that process. We use the word guide, and that the center of the story is actually the decision maker, the buyer, and their life. So just wanted to clarify on that point, because I don't think that's obvious to everybody. We don't mean when your grandfather started the company 65 years ago. We mean, how is this related to your buyer's personal journey, to their personal story? The way I think, especially Larry, the more technical a company becomes, the more they tend to think that people are buying because of product or service superiority. They tend to think my methodology is very special, or these particular deliverables are very special. And I'm not saying they don't matter, but where that bridge, about the storytelling bridge, where it's helpful is when we get common language about why people really buy from us. What is the benefit that is deeper than the actual software or the actual consulting service? If we can get to some common language about that, from how we market to how we sell, then we have continuity in the language. And then it can inform from a customer journey experience, everything from clicking on an ad, reading about you on LinkedIn, going to your landing page, interviewing with you on the phone, and then applying to your programs. There's continuity, because we don't have, for example, our marketing acting like people are making decisions for a certain reason, but sales treating people a different way. We can actually have continuity across the whole thing.
I love the concept of putting the customer at the center of the story. So if you think about a story arc, there's different ways to frame it, but there's definitely a moment where that hero leaves the ordinary world. There's an incident, there's a problem. They have to formulate a plan. The plan doesn't work. There's a villain. They hit bottom. They go on this journey through the forest, this whole thing. And then the trusted guide shows up. And the trusted guide has a different story. So the trusted guide story is their origin story. And the origin story is there for a purpose, which is to make sure that that hero gets to the destination and fulfills their destiny, so to speak. So when you integrate that kind of concept with sales, how do you shift the thinking? I think it's such a fundamentally different way to ask a technical expert or an engineer or a consultant to start thinking that way. How do you take someone out of their head where they're thinking of themselves as an expert and they want to talk about their expertise, and have them start thinking of themselves basically as a fairy godmother, or Obi-Wan Kenobi or something.
Right. And in a way, in the Star Wars metaphor, Yoda is so helpful, because actually, wouldn't it be interesting to do a word count? I've never done this, but I bet he just doesn't have very many words.
Right.
Or think in Lord of the Rings about Gandalf, right? Like, he just didn't have that many words compared to what comparable important characters in the movies have in terms of word count, but that doesn't diminish his power at all. So I feel like what you're asking, another way of what you're asking, if I'm understanding correctly, is how does a person go from being a presenter and accidentally making themselves the center of the whole story to being to operating a whole other way?
That's right.
And so, Larry, this is it. I mean, the goal of a discovery call is to understand someone else's goals. And so when I work with people, and I talk about this in the book, this is freely available for $15. I'm not trying to make it hard for people. I want to make it very easy for people, because I want people to transform the way they sell and the way they think about selling, because it's so liberating and life-giving to enjoy that profession more and to get more of the right products and services into the right people's hands. It's such a joy. If you will come up with your own ways that you feel fully authentic to yourself, but get at the question, what are you trying to accomplish? Why are we talking here? And what are you trying to accomplish? Having 5 versions of that, what are your goal questions, will unleash I think about a dam breaking, right? Like the water rushing in, of people saying, oh, here's what else I've tried. Here's what else I've done. Even very introverted people, they will tell you, if you ask great, thoughtful, open-ended questions that focus on them, what else they've tried to solve this issue that's brought them to you, what are they hoping to go. And I don't think, by the way, it all has to be about selling the pain. I don't think it all has to be like some version of what keeps you up at night, which no one should ever say because everyone's tired of hearing that question.
Right.
Right? But it doesn't have to be just from the negative. It could be assuming the best. It could be saying, where are you hoping to take things? Right? Tell me where you're going with your business.
This is all story. It goes back to understanding the story arc.
Exactly. So there's not a wrong way. I don't mind if people say, what else have you tried? Like, I don't mind approaching it from the negative. I think no one likes pain. So I don't even like in sales training to use that word very much. But I think whether you approach it from the negative or the positive, if you come up with ways that you ask some kind of version of what are your goals, you will sell different than the majority of the people out there. You will no longer be a presenter. You will, I promise, receive useful information that you can then listen carefully and think sincerely. Is this a conversation where I'm equipped to continue? Because as I hear them state their goals, I know that I have enough information and enough knowledge in my own industry to be helpful. Or maybe I'm going to pretty quickly realize, oh, I see why you booked a call with me, or I see why you agreed to take my call. But now that I'm really hearing your goals, I realize that my friend so-and-so is actually a better fit for you. This happens to me all the time in marketing, by the way. People think they think that they want sales training. And when we talk, I realize, oh, you actually need a fractional sales director, or you actually are not ready for your sales team because your website is so unclear about what you sell that I actually need to refer you to a marketing partner. And then I want to talk with you because we can't use the tools available in your company yet because you've got some other background work to do first. So I actually disqualify all the time on calls, but I think that they can still leave the call with a referral and thinking, this woman was so helpful in adding value to me, and I have a plan to follow on my path, on my journey. And she was still a guide to me because she pointed me in a helpful direction.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things here. One is I'd highly recommend to anybody listening is a good entry point, the book. So checking that out, it's probably the easiest way to kind of start getting into some of these thinking. But then to actually do it, you really do need more. It's not enough, I think, just to read a book. And I know you've built a community of like-minded people who are on this journey with you at a very reasonable cost. And it's organized. It's something that anybody can do, and you have to change your whole life around to go through. It's not like you have to go through, one of these 6-month intensive boot camp programs or something. You just show up for the meetings.
Exactly. Thank you for teeing that up for me. So I actually developed this at the beginning of the pandemic, Larry. I had a pretty long intensive course, which I still love to offer because major change for people, it requires some work, right? I still have those, but with all of the
people like us call that a offer stack or a marketing funnel or a series of offers. So just anybody listening, it's like all these things are really important, but this is a way to get to know somebody in an easy to adopt manner. So you're not making a huge commitment, you're getting a lot of value back. And then you can go further when you realize, okay, I gotta get great at this.
So the offer stack, the value stack that's available to people is under my website. There's a free stuff tab. And the free stuff is not junk. It's really good. I mean, there's really some great resources, like things like this week, stop saying these 3 phrases and you're going to feel like you're adding more value in sales calls. People have bad habits in sales that actually are, some of them are not that difficult to correct once someone brings them to your attention. So there's a great free stuff tab at extraboldsales.com. Then there's the book, $10 on Kindle, $15 on Amazon US. That's the next least expensive way. And then what you were referring to, Larry, is that I have a weekly group coaching that people pay by the month, but it's available weekly. And most people who are members come 3 of the 4 weeks a month. I mean, of course, you're welcome to come as much as often, but I'm saying you don't even have to come every single time to get enough value out of that to feel like this was worth it. And I teach these principles in rotation inside that group, and you just subscribe for as long as it makes sense. That was really my entrepreneur love letter to the world, was putting that out there and saying it needs to be easier to get help. And in the uncertainty that so many small businesses experienced, 18 months ago, I wanted to have a way that was lower commitment, but still high value. And I have no plans to stop offering that. I mean, it was sort of born out of this need, but it has served me, it served them. And like you said, it's such an easy entry point to then decide. Some people never go up and buy something else, and some use that as a way to get to know me and then potentially hire me for something else.
Exactly. I love what you're doing. Thanks so much. These are such great ideas. And I really appreciate you sharing so openly your perspective on what's happening right now.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks for the opportunity to visit with you.